Hot Water History, episode 141. Back to our Wednesday nights. Richard, what's going on?
I was so hoping that the White Sox were going to lose tonight and we could celebrate the ineptitude because Chicago's gone from the city of big and broad shoulders as an industrial powerhouse and famous for its devotion to industry and hard work to the city of huge ineptitude.
The 120 loss Chicago White Sox might be the best team of all time. They've won two straight.
Yeah.
They refuse to lose. They're about to break the record for the most losses in MLB history, or they've tied it and they're about to break it. And we kind of wanted to time up part of this episode for when they broke the record, but now they won't lose. So by the time you're listening to this, maybe they've lost by now, but we're going to assume that they lose one out of the next four
Mm.
and that this becomes the team with the most losses ever. But
Yes.
there's other parts that we want to talk about with the White Sox, including the stadium. And I think we're going to do a good job because we kind of have two topics tonight. We got the White Sox, and then we've got the Chicago Teachers Union. And I think over the last 2 years, they've kind of been on 2 decades, sorry. They've kind of been on the similar trajectory.
To be sure.
Can you measure a baseball team by that city's teachers union?
Well,
Is that the next essay?
they seem to have similar business plans. They lose out for their customers' clientele, but they take in windfalls of cash from the public. So while no one's going to accuse the Chicago Teachers Union of being capitalistic or have any respect whatsoever for free markets or even individual liberty and agency, let's not distinguish them from Jerry Reinsdorf and the board of the Chicago White Sox, who, well, one could argue that Jerry's just been doing the bilking of the public and the Chicago taxpayer for more decades than the Chicago Teachers Union, at least successfully for more decades, with even less success.
I want to pull this up. 30 years later, taxpayers still on the hook for White Sox Stadium.
Mm,
The 39 and 120 Chicago White Sox. 38 and 120, 39? I don't know.
something like that.
Taxpayers still paying for the stadium.
Sure are.
What's the fan status actually before we get into this? Have you come around at all with
Come around. What do you
you don't
mean?
want to be there for their lowest point and then when they're back?
Oh, I'm never going back. I can't in good conscience knowing and I've had to swallow the bitter pill of trying to reconcile my previous White Sox fandom with and love of baseball with all those experiences that I had as a kid, which I loved. I went to the old Comiskey Park, so I was in the last night game at the old Comiskey Park, and I was at the first game at the new Comiskey Park, the stadium that, if you're watching on video, you're looking at now. Uh, Lo these 30 or 30 plus years ago. So it opened in 1991. Um, I can't, in good conscience, continue to support with any type of monetary purchase or even just my baseball fandom, if you will, anything regarding the White Sox. I hope that they implode as an organization and Jerry Reinsdorf meets his uh, inglorious end in very quick fashion so as to rescue both Major League Baseball and anyone associated with this team and get them out of the South Side of Chicago, or if they're going to stay in the South Side of Chicago, that they have entirely new ownership, because this guy is just a crony capitalist political entrepreneur par excellence, and he's been blackmailing and bilking the Illinois and Chicago governments for decades, going back to 1991, where the famous, or I'm sorry, 1990, where the famous story was he had entered into secretive agreements to move the White Sox to Florida. And then through a lot of backroom dealings, both in Chicago and in Springfield, where they actually took the clock, the legislative clock, the deadline, and they pulled the plug on the clock so as to pass this illegal bill to fund the building of a new stadium. At the time, it was $150 million. And it created a new government entity called the Illinois Sports Authority. And the Illinois Sports Authority was to finance and provide public largesse for the building and maintenance of this stadium. And it's done so on a number of different occasions, including funding the Soldier Field renovation about 15 or 20 years ago. And then also Wintrust Arena, which is home to a variety of events, including DePaul basketball. And by the way, taxpayers, as this piece from Illinois Policy Institute this is from 2017, by the way, noted that yeah, at the time they were still on the hook for about 100 million, and now we're still on the hook for another 50 million, paying for a stadium that, get this, think about the audacity of this crook of a man, he wants to abandon after their lease runs out in 2028. By the way, the Illinois Sports Facility and Sports Authority Institute, or whatever it's called, has funded major renovations to the park that you see, which is now known as Guaranteed Rate Field in its third or fourth iteration. And he has the audacity to want prime real estate in a block called the Block 76, I think that's the number, in the South Loop, and it to be publicly financed to the tune of $1 billion for a franchise that is the most poorly run and embarrassment, maybe in all of professional sports, certainly in Major League Baseball. And they have some competition with the Oakland/Sacramento A's. But that being said, yeah, he's trying to do his best to get yet another sweetheart deal.
Do you think he gets it?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any appetite for this. If the Bears can't get their funding for the stadium, what makes you think that the White Sox are going to get this type of funding? We have to also bring up another salient point. The state and city, so the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago are bankrupt. There's no two ways about that. So where is this money coming from other than further tax hikes? And by the way, speaking of tax hikes, written into the last minute bill that funded the new Comiskey Park in 1991, Reinsdorf had a clause inserted that if the White Sox drew annually less than 1.93 million fans, that the White Sox didn't have to pay any ticket taxes back to the Illinois Sports Authority. Moreover, the White Sox get all of the concession revenue, all of the parking revenue on land that they just simply lease. So imagine that you own, or you're renting from an apartment building and an apartment owner, and you get to not just live and in the building, but you get to sell the other rooms and maybe even rent out a restaurant to operate in one of the levels of the building. And then furthermore, you get the revenue from Spot Hero when you go ahead and sell the spot for an event or something in the parking area that the apartment has. I mean, that's the deal that the White Sox have.
While the name of the home stadium for the Chicago White Sox has changed over the years, its status as a tax burden has not. June 30th, and this was written in 2018.
2018.
So marks the 30th anniversary of the Illinois General Assembly passing a bill to publicly fund the construction of a new baseball stadium for the Chicago White Sox, and Illinoisans are still paying the price today. You touched on a lot of this. Efforts to publicly finance the stadium were the product of threats by White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf to move the team to Florida. Prompted by Reinsdorf's threats, then Governor Jim Thompson and then Chicago Mayor Harold Washington collaborated in drafting collaborated in drafting a measure to create a special purpose government authority for the construction of a new baseball stadium. The bill failed to make it out of the General Assembly at first, but lawmakers passed a similar bill months later, creating the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority, or ISFA, through which officials issued $120 million in revenue bonds to fund the construction of a 45,000 seat baseball stadium. Wow, 45,000 seats. What a waste.
Yes.
What a waste.
And now remember the nature of a revenue bond. A revenue bond is dependent upon actual revenues coming in to the city from the money-making facility. So they're still paying off the original bondholders, interest and principal, to the tune of $50 million. And this guy has the audacity, the sheer temerity to go hat in hand again. After we should note, of course, too, what we spoke of earlier in the episode. They are the worst run Major League Baseball franchise. They are a national embarrassment. They are certainly a city embarrassment, a civic embarrassment. But this man has operated the White Sox with just little to no regard for the fan, appreciation of the experience, product on the field. Yes, they won the World Series in 2005. I think that was just the lucky confluence of so many factors that were totally unexpected. And it's been a disaster ever since.
Reinsdorf, however, was unsatisfied with the $120 million package and continued to weigh a Florida relocation. And by 1988, Florida lawmakers had already approved a deal to accommodate the team. Florida White Sox merchandise even started to appear on the market.
I remember that.
But in June 1988, Thompson made an 11th hour push to keep the White Sox in Chicago. Under the pressure from the governor, state lawmakers approved a $150 million subsidy for the new stadium in the final hour of spring session, purportedly unplugging the clock on the House floor to cheat the midnight deadline. The White Sox remained in Chicago, and the new Comiskey Park opened in 1991. The stadium was renamed U.S. Cellular Field in 2003 and Guaranteed Rate Field in 2016. Oh, this is slimy. This is slimy.
You didn't know any of this?
No, I didn't know the figures.
I
didn't know about the 11th hour push. I didn't know about the clock unplug.
Oh.
According to a 2017 financial report, ISFA's combined fund deficits stand at $207.5 million, and taxpayers are still on the hook for debt repayments following a series of renovations at Guaranteed Rate Field and an overhaul of Soldier Field completed in 2003.
Yeah, remember, on top of all those, what would you call them? I don't know, elements of just total graft and kickback and all of that. What does Reinsdorf get? He actually compelled the ISFA to renovate the stadium that he was, by the way, they gave him they gave the White Sox the money. The White Sox had every initiative and they had all the power and authority to build the stadium the way they wanted. And then no one liked the stadium for a variety of factors. It was too high. It was just a kind of very sterile environment. And so they had the IFSA. Imagine, again, my analogy, you're living in the apartment, you sign a lease, they actually, by and large, let you design the apartment. And then when you're not happy years later with the design of the apartment, they pay for the renovation.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Through Chicago hotel tax revenue and a combined $10 million in annual state and local subsidies, taxpayers can expect to continue shouldering these costs for decades. More recently, a canceled concert at Guaranteed Rate Field cost taxpayers more than $1 million in 2017, when ISFA failed to obtain a full refund for the $1.6 million spent on the event. Chicago taxpayers are also picking up the tab for stadium outside ISFA's purview. For example, the recent construction of Wintrust Arena, home to DePaul University's basketball teams, and WNBA's Chicago Sky, cost taxpayers $82.5 million.
We should note that all the while, in between the year of 1990/91 and today, so we're talking, yeah, 35 years, there have been numerous stadia projects that have gone totally privately funded, including the complete renovation and total remaking and recasting of a large part of an entire Chicago neighborhood by the North Side baseball team, and that's the Chicago Cubs. Not one dime of taxpayer money was spent on the Cubs for their stadium renovation. But look at all the money spent on the White Sox. What a criminal enterprise. How can you be a libertarian and a White Sox fan?
Yeah, I'm starting to go through that right now. Taxpayer subsidized stadiums aren't limited to the Windy City. Despite years of substantial debt, the village of Rosemont created its 8th tax increment financing district in 2016 to fund the construction of Impact Field, a $60 million stadium for the Chicago Dogs, the village's independent baseball team. The Chicago Dogs were the 4th independent league baseball team in the Chicagoland area to receive a publicly funded home field, following the lead of Crestwood, Joliet, and Schaumburg. With the Chicago Dogs still in their first season, it's too early to bring Impact Field's attendance trends into account. However, subsidized stadiums in Crestwood, Joliet, and Schaumburg have each seen inconsistent attendance trends over their team's tenures. Attendance at Chicago's Wintrust Arena and Guaranteed Rate Field have been similarly disappointing, and that's in 2018.
Yeah, talk about, yeah. Imagine what that looks like now.
The pattern of lackluster attendance among taxpayer-subsidized stadiums should call into questions the merit of publicly funded sports venues. Many economists have demonstrated that the costs of taxpayer-funded sports stadiums far outweigh the benefits.
By the way, many of the economists who are doing great work on the lack of windfall or any type of compensation that cities and public municipalities get for funding these stadia are from these economists are largely working at the University of Chicago, just a couple miles away from Guaranteed Rate Field.
It's discouraging that state and local lawmakers have continued to allocate taxpayer dollars towards sports venues. Despite the waste and inefficiency of such ventures, lawmakers should learn from their dubious track record and leave the funding of private amusements to private investment.
Amen. If there's a need in the marketplace will fund it.
I feel like I need another shower.
Sorry, we're getting the nitty-gritty here.
Yeah, this is really childhood crushing right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what next steps are from here as far as fandom goes. I haven't been to a game in a while, I guess, but
Well,
it got to the point where it's getting to the point where you do feel disgusted.
icky.
Yeah.
And we should note that with one of the blessings of having such an abominably bad season, historically bad season, is that a lot of attention has been focused on the White Sox and how the organization is run. So Ken Rosenthal wrote a lengthy piece in The Athletic about how Jerry Reinsdorf treats this team like a hobby horse, his personal fiefdom, and has run it into the ground because he thinks he knows a lot about baseball, which it's evident that he doesn't. He has Tony La Russa, of all people, still around, lurking in the shadows of Guaranteed Rate Field over the operations they're in. And then Jesse Rogers just put out. Jesse Rogers is the ESPN correspondent slash guy on the White Sox beat, actually Cubs and White Sox beat for ESPN. He wrote a lengthy piece today, and then there was another one that came out in between, which featured the former White Sox pitcher Jake Peavy,
Oh,
and how
wow.
Peavy said, although the years that he spent in a White Sox uniform were some of his happiest and fondest, he said the chaos that surrounded the organization, where there was complete division, a manager who couldn't even stay in the same room with the general manager, and no one taking any type of personal responsibility for what was going on the field and off the field, in development in the minor league system, to the point where they even talked about how the White Sox are the only major league team that still charters a flight from using aircraft from the 1980s. Their charter flight is from their plane is from the 1980s. It only has 8 rows of first class seating. The rest of the players have to sit and coach. I mean, imagine that. And they have evidence of, in the athletic piece, they have, although players didn't want to go on the record, or nearly every player who leaves the White Sox tweets back or texts back to their friends who are still left on the team and says that, oh, this is what the major leagues are like.
Wow. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's the formula to be bad.
Yeah,
It's all this.
if it was Major League European Soccer, they would have had regression for this team.
Right. I kind of think we need to bring that to American sports.
Absolutely. Well, here's something that I've long advocated for, and people either like it or they don't like it. I don't know how you don't like this notion, um, especially if you want there to be competitive teams going down the stretch. Every professional sports team, but even and by the way, MLB has taken steps to this end to a degree, but why don't they have a type of reverse draft? Now, what I mean by that is, um, instead of the worst team's record getting the first pick in the draft and then subsequent rounds having the first pick, right? Why wouldn't the team that barely missed the playoffs get the first pick? So you'd have a competition at the end. Everybody would be striving to get as many wins as possible, because if, for example, if you took 12 of the 30 teams in the playoffs, team number 13 would get the first pick in the draft. Team
Right.
14 would get the second, team 15 the third. You see? And I'm not exactly sure why that didn't take a lot of thought on my part. I mean, why hasn't that not been implemented? Now, the players got the owners in MLB to concede in the last collective bargaining agreement that they don't want tanking, which is great. I'm glad the players insisted on doing that. So now, like the White Sox, think about how unfortunate, well, deserved misfortune the White Sox are going to experience, even though they have the worst record by far and in history this year. The highest they could pick is 10th.
I didn't know they started doing that.
Yes, they started doing that because they didn't want tanking going on. So you can't pick in the top 10 2 years in a row.
You can't pick in the top 10 2 years in a row.
Correct.
I had no idea about this. I
Hmm.
know of the NBA, but this doesn't really mean anything. But the three worst teams all have equal shot at the one.
Mm, yeah.
That almost makes it worse.
They implemented a lottery, but the highest pick that they can get is 10th. So of all the years to have been historically bad, this is the worst,
Right.
the most inopportune time.
What do you think happens next? Do they move? Jerry dies, they sell. Does Jerry die or does he sell the team first?
How about here's a death race for you: Pope Francis or Jerry Reinsdorf? All I know is I'm gonna be partying for both of them. Get my Grim Reaper costume out for Halloween.
Do
Swinging that scythe around, baby.
you want to talk school?
Yeah, talk about an organization that functions basically on uh in a system of shaking down and blackmailing the public, and they have their preferred their preferred candidate. They got him in to be mayor, and now, well, what do we have? The Chicago Public Schools and the Chicago Teachers Union. Local one. Local one.
Chicago School District in shambles as teachers union thwarts major change that could help turn fortunes around. The Chicago Teachers Union is attempting to block the closing of, quote, empty and, quote, failing public schools in Chicago, despite experts calling for closures and consolidations, according to a Monday report from WirePoint's, an Illinois nonprofit. Many public schools in Chicago are facing various issues, such as a steep decline in enrollment, budgetary stresses, and emptying schools, according to the report from WirePoints. While experts are calling for closures or consolidation of schools in the district, CTU have opposed the idea of potential closures and instead are calling for the school district to hire more employees.
Yeah. You ever see the ratio of teacher to student in the reverse, in the inverse? That's actually happening, especially when you weigh in administrator numbers in some of these schools. I think Douglas High School has something like 30 or 28 total students or something like that, and they have 36 administrators.
We got less customers. We need to hire more people.
Yes. Now that'd be something if you're like a Bentley dealership and you're putting out product that is just amazing. And the people who come in are just overwhelmed by the customer experience, so much so they can't wait to run to Google or tell their friends to buy a Bentley at this dealership. But guess what? The CTU is not putting out Bentley type or Bentley quality education, are they? Or
Quote,
is it?
if the union really believes that those staff are needed to improve student outcomes, it should approve of closings and consolidations so the district can more easily provide the needed amount of support staff for every school. Of course, the CTU doesn't approve because that would reduce its membership and its power.
Right.
So the district can more easily provide the needed amount of support staff for every school. So they just don't know. Is that what they're getting at? They just don't know how many people should be at each school.
No, well, you could ballpark it that it shouldn't be more teachers and administrators in a school than actual students. This is the wire points saying that if they were going to be acting on the best in the best interest of the students and the families and parents who make up the Chicago school, the population, right? They would reapportion and close the schools that are empty and focus resources in the ones where children are actually able to attend and are attending. Go ahead, talk more about the shrinking enrollment factor.
Shrinking enrollment was a key factor that led to the closure of 50 Chicago schools back in 2013, according to the WirePoints report. Despite some calling for Chicago public schools to either close or consolidate to help, quote, save on capital expenditures, CTU have continued to oppose this idea, according to WirePoints. Quote, most recently, CPS reported just 323,000 students attending schools, WirePoint said in their report. That's a debilitating drop of 26% over the 2 decades.
Think about that. Over a
26%.
quarter of the population, the school population in Chicago Public Schools is gone. And yet teachers and administrators and their salaries have gone up. Can you think of anything more antithetical to market forces?
And they want more.
They want, well, of course they do.
Quote, the drop in enrollment has been overwhelmingly driven by a 50% drop in Black attendance, down by about 115,000. The report mentions, wow, the fact that crime continues undeterred in the city and that Black reading proficiency levels for graduating students remain stuck at near 10% are sure to be contributing factors to their flight.
There are schools in this report from WirePoints wherein they have, again, the inverse ratio of administrators and teachers to students. 0% of the students, despite the plethora, the overwhelming number of adults in the building to somehow they're supposed to be facilitating their education, 0 students are at grade level for reading.
0.
0.
Quote, CPS wants to spend $1 billion alone on maintenance slash upgrades for the 20 most empty schools, Wirepoint said.
Many of them are to green the schools. So go ahead.
In all, the district says it needs a massive $14.4 billion to address emergency building repairs and to fully renovate all 522 of its public school buildings. That's nearly $5 billion more than the entire annual budget for the district. CTU has accused CEO of Chicago Public Schools, Pedro Martinez, of planning to consolidate or close schools in the district with low enrollment, calling Martinez a, quote, huge barrier to our collective success, despite his denying claims about school closure plans. According to Chalkbeat Chicago, the union has called for Martinez to step aside amidst their ongoing contract negotiations with the school district. Didn't Paul Vallis, used to be the CEO of Chicago
Yes.
Public Schools?
Yes,
He
and
did?
he lost to Brandon Johnson in the election. He was not willing to buckle to the same degree as Johnson is to Stacey Davis Gates and all these criminals here.
Quote,
Cartel.
CEO Martinez plans for closures, cuts, consolidations, and furloughs are a call to action, CTU said in their post.
These are communists.
We need to show our strength and solidarity in the coming weeks so that we can win a transformative contract and put an end to discussions of balancing the budget on the backs of our students and school communities.
They couldn't care less about their students.
Quote, our members know the district desperately needs a leader who will fight for the resources our students deserve, and CEO Martinez has lost our confidence, CTU went on to say. We need someone who can steer CPS towards equity, growth, and opportunity, not back to the harmful decisions of the past. Our students and communities deserve a leader who will invest in the future of public education and prioritize Black and Brown neighborhoods, not leave them behind. We believe it's time for CEO Martinez to step aside for someone who will seize this historic opportunity to transform our schools.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers union endorsed Democratic Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson over former Democratic Mayor Lori Lightfoot in the city's most recent mayoral race in part. Wait.
Well, and
Vallis
later. And Vallis
okay.
later. Yeah.
In part because CTU opposed reopening the district schools during the pandemic until school teachers became vaccinated.
Yeah.
Some question CTU's endorsement of Johnson due to his having been on the union's payroll, according to a report from the Illinois Policy Institute from March 2023. Quote, chronic absenteeism has been poor access across the nation since the pandemic, but in Chicago, it's worse. Senior Vice President of Illinois Policy Institute, Hillary Gowan, said. That hurts students' futures and the city's well-being. The number of over half empty public schools in Chicago has doubled over the past decade. According to data found, many public school students in Chicago cannot read at grade level. Chicagoans' deep-seated connections to their neighborhoods, schools shouldn't be easily dismissed, Wirepoint said, but neither should the long-term trend of families fleeing CPS, the increase in empty schools and worsening literacy rates, not to mention the tax hikes as the cost of mismanagement keep going up. How long is this? Okay.
Yeah.
Reading proficiency is one of the key concerns among teachers at CPS. Is it?
I'm worried about whether they can read.
Many Chicago residents have said they feel that their public school students are not learning enough. In brief, Public Agenda's survey finds that Chicagoans think the biggest problem in the city's public schools is that students are not learning enough academically. A plurality of city residents, particularly parents, think the system's main goal should be to prepare students for college.
And then there's a citation of
Yeah.
the episode where they lost the $23 million worth of iPads and laptops while
And
they were
just didn't know
begging
where
for
it
more
went.
technology. Yeah, just we don't know where it went. We don't know where they went.
Quote, the biggest problem is the system doesn't work. President of Wire Point's Ted Dabrowski told the Daily Wire. Kids can't read. They can't do math.
Now, if we could pause, I'm starting to feel bad for the chicken wing lady. I mean, she got caught just selling chicken wings and bilking the Dalton school district, right? Or was it Harvey? I can't remember. But think about that. Who took the fall for the $23 million in laptops and
No one.
iPads? No one. No.
Quote, I think that parents and Chicago residents should wake up to the fact that CPS is spending $30,000 per kid. And most kids, like the overwhelming amount of kids, can't read.
It's just that simple, isn't it?
$30,000 doesn't work.
A year.
Quote, and everybody should know that, and everybody should be up in arms to do something about that. You know, school closures is just the beginning. That's not really a solution. Really, we need to obsess about literacy, and we need to give parents the choice to go to some other schools besides the public schools. Quote, I think the biggest concern, just when you look at data talking about how students are performing in the district, is how few students are reaching grade level standards for reading and math each school year. So this past spring, 2023 is the most recent test data available that the Illinois State Board of Education has released for student outcomes. On that 2023 test, just 26% of Chicago 3rd through 8th graders could read at grade level.
And the
Quote, the
bulk of, by
Chicago,
the way, the bulk of those who can read at grade level are from the magnet and good
right,
in neighborhood schools. So they're the ones that are pulling up the otherwise abysmal
they
average.
lump in the stats, yeah.
Yeah.
Quote, the Chicago Public Schools Board of Education just released a 5-year strategic plan outlining kind of their proposal for how to invest in the district, then to improve student outcomes over the next 5 years, Schmidt told the DCNF. But one big thing that we noticed in their plan is a discussion of how to redefine student success in the district, which is just interesting because it seems to have a lack of accountability on the district's part for the increasing rates of students not meeting proficiency in reading and math. CPS pointed the DCNF to a statement that says that there are currently no plans to close any schools. CTU declined to comment to the DCNF.
Yeah. There you are.
Yuck. 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 Property taxes.
Yep. Ad valorem, baby. Oh well. Well,
What a joke.
yeah. But it's just gonna keep
How,
going.
how are we gonna build the roads though?
Yes, right? Turn over to the same entity that's going to surrender its power and authority to a teachers union that declared during COVID that demanding that teachers go back to work during COVID was a sure sign of racism and bigotry. So, meanwhile, of course, there's pictures of the teachers union and their heads and the teachers themselves off in Puerto Rico vacationing during COVID. Why not?
It's disgusting. You want to talk about a town that's not much better?
Let's do it.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
We should go to your gay suburb now.
Here it is. The People segment. Just got one today. I wanted you to see this. Infant Welfare Society welcomes new executive director.
Boy, they're starting them on welfare young, huh?
John McElwain says he leads with a passion for social justice. The Infant Welfare Society.
But by the way, too, there was a great quote I saw from Thomas Sowell about social justice, and allow me to summarize. It won't be as brilliantly articulate as Sowell was, but he says basically, social justice is just the thinly uh, worded veneer that is attached to stealing from someone who's productive, and then taking credit for it while you give it to someone else. That's all social justice is.
Yeah.
It's all driven by envy.
John McElwain said he has wanted to help people since he was young. Quote, I decided at the age of 12 that I was going to become a minister. The minister at my church put his hand on my head and he said, I won't be surprised if this kid preaches someday, McElwain said. And he did. But the job behind the pulpit led McElwain through a circuitous. I've never seen that word.
Come
Circuitous
on.
route. Never seen it. Circuitous route. I didn't go to Chicago public schools. I went to a better school than that, but I've never seen the word circuitous in my life. A circuitous route in his career that serendipitously, I know that word, led him to the Infant Welfare Society. The 59-year-old Oak Park resident started his job September 3rd as executive director of Oak Park River Forest Infant Welfare Society.
We
Quote,
teach these babies to apply for green cards and are for food stamps right away. They gotta get the yeah.
Quote, John is a values-driven executive leader focused on and experienced in evolving organizations to adapt to changes in their environment, said Susanna Schrader. McElwain said commitment to social justice makes him the right person for the job because no one else in Oak Park is committed to social justice.
Absolutely. Couldn't find someone by, walking right outside your door.
Cool. Many of us start with an upper hand and some of us start in a deficit. I know that the Infant Welfare Society is one of the social responses to that deficit, he said. McElwain said his ministerial skills as a listener will benefit him in this position. Quote, I think it's important for me to listen to hear what has been done, hear what has been successful, hear what the staff says needs to change, he said. McElwain said he has clear goals as executive director, including increasing the usage of the clinic, strengthening the brand, and building a more sustainable business model. The Infant Welfare Society has been I'm not going crazy. The Infant Welfare Society, this is a typo, has been one of the not-for-profit organizations that embodies the persona of Oak Park, an incredibly caring, giving a community that in general has a higher level of disposable income in general population.
What a disaster of a paragraph.
Oh my gosh. And
this
really
was
does
CPS student wrote this.
Yeah, and really does care about using those resources in a way to make society better, McElwain said. Growing up, McElwain saw the church as a way to help people as well. Quote, what drove me to become ordained was the civil rights movement.
Good Lord, this guy.
That's kind of a back-to-back sentences. It goes, growing up, McElwain saw the church as a way to help people as well. But so you think the church would be the next thing that is talked about?
There's no faith.
What drove me to become ordained was the civil rights movement, McElwain said. Quote, I'm too young to have marched, but while I was developing into a more cognizant member of society, reading newspapers and watching TV, I began to really believe that the world is unfair and that there were certain segments of society that were just not given a fair shot. He said he committed to trying to fight to right those wrongs and saw the church as an institution that had the ability to do that. After growing up in Margate City, a small community just 5 minutes from Atlantic City, McElwain moved to Chicago in 1987, craving a big city environment. After 5 years in the city, McElwain moved to Berwyn, where his wife grew up. There, he became a pastor at the First Congressional Church.
That's an awkward sentence.
I was going to say.
Where his wife grew up. Wait a second. How young is his wife?
Yeah.
This guy's really interested in infant welfare.
Yeah. There, he became a pastor at the First Congressional Church of Berwyn.
Congressional, congregational.
Quote, the first thing I did when I got to church in Berwyn was build a community-wide movement that gave birth to a human rights ordinance for the city of Berwyn, he said. This was after the Campbell family, who were Black and Jamaican, were pushed out of Berwyn because of their race. The church asked McIlwain how they can fight against racism in Berwyn, and from there, the Human Rights Ordinance for Berwyn was born. After serving many years as a minister, McIlwain said he needed more consistent hours and decided to get into commercial real estate. Then in 2007, the economy collapsed and McIlwain had to start fresh. Quote, I was afforded the opportunity to figure out what I really want to do, he said. He combined his career in social justice and philanthropy with his transactional experience in commercial real estate and decided to try his hand at fundraising, becoming the head fundraiser for a hillside nonprofit called Aspire. There, McIlwain transformed Aspire to be what it is today. Oh, I love this sentence. I read this earlier. Aspire used to be called Proviso Association of Retarded Council. Not great. So that had to change.
That's great.
They wrote out retarded in the Wednesday Journal. I'm so happy I'm so happy they didn't do the stars. They didn't do the little
Why,
they didn't do
why,
the R word.
the major
Oh,
question is why
we
they
should
changed the name.
We should so write in. We should so write in and say we're offended that they said retarded. I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that.
Wait. Not great.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna take this a little further.
Go for it.
I'm gonna say this again. Aspire used to be called Proviso Association of Retarded Council. Not great. So that had to change.
The thing is, they weren't helping mentally retarded people. They were just retarded themselves.
I
I don't think you're a member of the retarded council. Oh, believe me. He
Not great.
qualifies.
So that had to change. And before I got there, if you were to ask anybody on staff what Aspire does, they would have said, quote, we take care of those poor people that can't take care of themselves. The executive director and I both knew that had to change, that that's not forward thinking, he said. He helped move the organization toward a more progressive goal of creating a community where people of all abilities live, learn, and grow together. He then worked for Equal Hope, a health equity advocacy organization connected to Rush University. There, he worked on the Metropolitan Chicago Breast Cancer Task Force, an entity that studied why Black women are more likely to die from breast cancer and attempted to correct it. Today, McIlwain is looking for his next challenge at IWS. Quote, I was looking for somewhere I can continue to learn and continue to develop as a leader, he said.
Of course, no mention of actual any progress that was made in
No.
any of these endeavors. Never.
It's the thought that counts.
Yeah. Yep. That's it. That's it. Oh, man. Well, he seems like, from what I could tell by his speech pattern and what he said and his advocacy for social justice, he fits right in the retard council. What was it called again? The Proviso Advisory Retard Council?
It was called, I love how it says not great. I just wish I was
Yeah,
there.
yeah, not great.
I just wish I was there for him actually saying that.
Yeah. Proviso Association of Retarded Council. That's great. Oh, that's great.
They used to get straight to the point, man.
That'd be great. I'll tell you, I don't know about this council. We never show up on time. Things take forever. Everybody has to go to the bathroom all the time. We get nothing done. But it's good being together.
This council is kind of slow. Anyways, that's the segment.
Boom.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay? All right, everyone.
Yeah.
We got some fun episodes coming up.
Yeah, we do. It's gonna be a lot of things popping on the podcast, so stay tuned. Hopefully, you're not called or appointed to the retarded council.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will look forward to what the Wednesday Journal is going to do with Charlie's letter, in which he says he was just incensed by the use of the word retarded by Mr. Minister McElwain.
If it gets any reaction, it'll be gold.
Yeah, for sure. I hope they reprint it. That would be amazing. And then they put you have to put your byline host of the
No,
Hot
I'm
Water
not
History
saying that. I'm
podcast.
not saying that.
You should. Why
No,
not?
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Because then they'll know pretty quickly.
I still have dreams about getting our ad on one of the billboards
know.
at 290.
I need to make a lot of money so I can do that.
Yeah, you and me both. We'll get it to.
I need to run it up.
Yes, let's run it up so we could see our goofy faces on a board saying the Hot Water History
We're
Podcast.
just like it's me and my headset. Just
Yeah.
that would be great.
Listen to the two-man retarded council every week.
How much is it to get a billboard?
Oh my gosh, it's expensive. Maybe 2,500 a month, I'll say.
What highway do we want?
290. Got to be in Oak Park.
It's only 2,500 a month.
Yeah, maybe that's low. I don't know. That seems like a lot for a billboard, though, don't you think?
Oh my gosh, I'm just saying that doesn't take. I would spend $2,500 to see.
I don't know if that goes into like the actual production of it.
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's just for the space. Yeah.
Just for the space, yeah. But I don't know. I can't remember looking at it in most recent times, but that's what it seems to pop in my head. But anyway. All right, well, buy Tridentine beer stuff. And we love our sponsor. God bless our sponsor. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Peace out.
Peace out. Bye.
Yep.